If you work hard enough, you can get it. You
Okay.
strive hard enough, if you set goals, if you do it. We grew up like that and we worked hard and we got what we wanted. But with
Mhm.
infertility, you can't do that. You can do everything right. You can pray, you can do all the treatments, and it's still doesn't happen. So
Mhm.
it forces you to totally rely on God 100% because you have no other choice.
Have you ever found yourself struggling in the midst of life thinking, this is not what I had planned or hoped for? Well, then you are not alone, my friend. Life has its ups and downs, no matter how well we thought we planned things out. Welcome to the Redeemed Podcast, where we will encourage others through personal experience, even when life does not go the way we planned it. Through various interviews, you will hear amazing stories of lives being transformed, even in impossible situations. My name is Lauren Burns, and I am the host of the Redeemed Podcast. I'm so happy to invite my sweet friend Julie to come on to the podcast today. Julie's been in my life for a very long time. She's one of my oldest friends, and she has quite the story. Her and her husband, Jeremy, have a beautiful daughter that she will share all about her gorgeous daughter and their journey of going through a couple of years of longing for a child and having to really rely on God when it was hard and it was a struggle because things did not come so easy. So, Julie, thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for being vulnerable and being willing to share your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, tell me a little bit about those early years of you guys wanting to have a child and what did that look like for you?
It's kind of crazy. Before we got married, we both told each other, if you want to have children, don't marry me. We got married and it was about 10 years later. So I was about 33. I remember and my heart started changing and I kept thinking, I wouldn't necessarily mind a child. And then it got to be like, I would like a child. And my heart was just changing. And it was God. It was a God thing. I was a little afraid and nervous to bring it up to Jeremy. What I didn't know is at the same exact time, God was changing his heart and he was just nervous to bring it up to me. So at the same time, we're literally within a year, we were both wanting to have a child, but we did not want to bring it up to each other. Finally, it came up. I don't even remember how. And we were like, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be upset if we had a child. Yeah, me too. And we were like, what? And so we were just like, how long has this been happening? Like about a year. So at 33, we started trying to have a child. And in a nutshell, it was a 7 year, very long, painful at times, and strengthening all at the same time journey. That was the start of our journey. And of course, we tried just naturally. And we had all the tests run after about 2 years. If anybody's ever been through infertility, that struggle, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we got all the tests, and it was actually frustrating because they labeled us as unexplained infertility.
Mm.
So
Were you able to get pregnant and you had miscarriages or you could not get pregnant?
never. Could not get
Never
pregnant.
could.
No.
Wow, for 7
Um,
years. What was that like? I think of during those times, your friends are getting pregnant and having children, and you're watching this happen around you, and Jeremy's been involved with sports and with youth forever,
mhm.
and you are involved with kids, and that's your
Yeah.
ministry. What was that like, and how did you walk through that?
It was hard. It was just hard. And we're both Christians and we both believe that God has a purpose, but it's still hard. And especially when, like you said, our friends at the time had already gone through it. Most of our friends already had children. If not, they were all having children at the time. I went to so many baby showers, just longing to be a mom, but nobody knew because we did not say anything.
Mm,
Nobody knew. People asked all the time, when are y'all going to have kids? Y'all would have some beautiful kids, not meaning anything by it.
mhm.
Oh, we're just not yet, not yet. And inside it was like, oh, just we wanted to have kids. Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. And then we did go through some fertility treatments, UIs. We went through, I think, 4 of those. And we really felt we did not feel hesitant to go through that. We felt like God was fine with us doing that. So we did move forward with that. We prayed through this whole thing. That required shot, um, painful procedures and tests and all the things. During that time, I'd mentioned to you before, it reminds me of the Israelites in the desert because when you think about 7 years, it's easy for me to say now, "Oh, yeah, we didn't have kids for 7 years. We wanted
Mm,
them." But when you do that month by month, Like every single month that we tried a procedure, I'm not gonna get emotional. Or we tried a million things, and every month, of course, I would discover we weren't pregnant first, and
Mhm.
then I was heartbroken, and then I would have to then go break my husband's heart. I'm not good at math, but just imagine 7 years, 12 months a year. It was heartbreak. I
Mhm.
remember filming myself sometimes on my phone when I would go in there and take a pregnancy test. Like, what if this is the one and I wanna have it on film, what I can show my daughter, and it never
Mm,
happened, never. Anyway, yeah, it was hard. It's even hard thinking about it right now.
very
Um,
hard. You wanna give up. How many times did you wanna give up and think,
um,
"This isn't what
yeah,
God's calling for me?" And the financial part, and it makes sense not to wanna tell anybody because you don't want people asking you, because it's hard
yeah.
enough as it is, the pressure you feel.
Yeah, and living in the South, a taboo
Yeah.
subject, us dealing with sexual things or female parts or whatever. I think people just don't talk about it.
Mhm.
And really 1 in 7 couples, of course, after getting into this, struggle with infertility. It's very common. So I am glad like the Christian community is speaking out about it more because we need to support each other and find support groups and pray for each other as well. But yeah, just like during every month after month, it reminds me in the Bible of the Israelite and they were going through the desert and God would provide them manna for that day. And this really brought me hope throughout this because as I would read the Bible and I pressed in hard to God, now I am glad we went through it. I can look back and say that now because it
Mhm.
drew me so close to God. At the time, I didn't like it, but it did. And God did provide manna for us. Like He didn't lay out like the whole book. I didn't know how it was going to end, but He did just give me like tidbits along the way to keep me having that mustard seed of faith, of hope.
Mhm.
And I just love how in that story in the Bible, it's he literally never gave them an extra except for on the day before the Sabbath, so that he would have enough for 2 they would have enough for 2 days, but
Mhm.
force them to trust God. You had no other option. You had to trust God. I feel honestly for me, my personality and my husband's, it would have taken a lot for us, and that's why I took infertility probably, to totally rely on God because Lauren, you're the same way. We grew up together and it was always like, if you want A, B, or C, you just need to do 1, 2, and 3. I mean,
Mhm. It's crazy sitting here talking to you because the person I always share about and their family is you. When you came into my life, I was jealous of you and your family because I came from a broken childhood. I didn't have a father in my life and a father and mother that were married biological, and you had that perfect family, your parents married and still married all these years, and your grandparents in your life and all those things. So the things you're talking about is I wanted that so bad, but God had to wrestle with me. Like you said, I couldn't strive for those things that you had in your family. God had to give me peace and walk the forgiveness of my own life. So that was my wilderness journey. And
yeah.
so
Wow.
I get what you're saying of like that 7 years of infertility and that wilderness journey. It's so hard, but God teaches you so much in the wilderness and having to rely on him and having to trust in him. And for you and Jeremy, how did that affect your marriage? Because that's hard when you're walking through that together.
It brought us closer together, and unfortunately, a lot of couples it doesn't. Actually, our lady who gave us sonograms a lot, she said, "I just can't believe y'all are still married." And when she said that, we looked at each other, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Most couples don't make it through a few years of infertility, let alone 7 or more for people who are still going through it." And Jerry didn't grow up Christian. He grew up with an atheist stepdad at one point, and his grandma was a Christian, and he had some influences, but he had to find God on his own pretty much. It definitely also made him press in. He found God long before we got married, but it definitely made him stronger. And he started praying at night. That was something in the beginning of our marriage. We were not like praying together. We prayed, we went to church, but we didn't pray together, which seems so obvious, but it took that to draw us so close together where we were both like yearning and like just pouring ourselves out like humbly. God, we have nothing. We can do nothing at all. Like it's all up to you. And we're here as a couple. Just if you don't want us to have a child, don't need us as a child. And we really came to that. We really did come to that together. If this is not what you want for us, we don't want it either. That was hard to say because every story doesn't end how we want it to end. And but we did come to that realization. We also, after doing our IUIs, we did not feel comfortable moving forward with IVF unless God clearly told us to move that direction.
Educate me on that because it's so expensive.
Yeah, it is very expensive. It's the average cost of that is $25,000 for one round. In the US, insurance, or at least in Texas, insurance does not cover it at all. So it's all out of pocket. So, but the main reason is we didn't want to try to force something the way we felt. Everybody has their own feelings about it, and every couple have to come to that on their own and what their beliefs are. But for us, we didn't want to force it. IVF is not a for sure thing at all. They gave us a 50% chance, even with IVF. But that's where they basically you have surgery, the lady has surgery, and they take out your eggs, and then they take out his sperm, and they put them together in a petri dish, and they see if any embryos can mate.
Okay.
And so it's shots for months on months, and
Mm.
it's the surgery is it's just it's a lot. So we didn't again, every couple does their own thing, but we just really felt if God wanted us to go that extreme, that he would open the right door. And
Mhm.
so we pray. Now, this is a cool story. I have to tell you this. I don't like to go into too much detail, but I,
Mhm.
I joined a support group. One night I was up just crying in the middle of the night. I think I was about 5 years into dating, and I was just so lost. What else can I do? And the devil, oh, the devil came at me so hard, trying to convince me that I wasn't fit to be a mother, that God didn't think I would be a good mother. Just a lot of shame. The devil just, he comes at you on where you're weak, just like with my self
Mhm.
esteem and things. Constantly, if God really wanted you to be a mother, he would make you a mother. It's all lies. God
Mhm.
obviously was doing this so I could have a testimony for him. Now I've been able to
Mhm.
help so many people along the way. But anyway, what happened, the way what happened with the IVF journey is I joined a group in the middle of the night one night, I was up crying and just searching for Bible verses and just like full on the internet. The internet actually produced something good. I found this group
Yeah.
called Waiting and Hope. It was a group in Tyler. It's just a support group. They have them all over, really. And I found this group. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to this. So I joined this group and I went for about a year or so and heard all these other women also waiting. It was such a blessing. I highly encourage people to find a support group if they're going through this, especially a Christian support group. We had prayed about doing IVF. And this is when we decided. I know you mentioned earlier that I finally shared it online, and it was scary because we had nobody knew except for my parents and my sister. And this was probably 5 or so years in. And we decided God kept laying it on our heart to share it on a Facebook Live. I was like, oh my gosh. And Jeremy was like, no, Julie. We were really just, we both felt so uncomfortable, but I strongly felt it that we needed to share it. So we went online that night and we literally did a Facebook Live. We just told people, "We don't know. We've been doing this thing for about 5 years. We don't know if we'll ever have a child, but we wanna share it publicly because if it does ever come to pass, we want it to be glorifying God and just asking for prayers." So anyway, we shared it on Facebook Live, and I was in that support group at the time going once every 2 weeks, and we told them on the Facebook Live, we told them that there was this grant that we applied for to help pay for the cost of IVF. We were gonna apply for this grant. They only did it twice a year. They only picked 5, 10 couples in the US max. We thought, if God lets us get this grant, we will feel like he's opening it. If he
Mhm.
doesn't let us get this grant, we're not moving forward. Even though some people in our family members, my mom and dad are very supportive, they had offered to help. Please don't let financial things stop you or whatever. But we didn't want to force it. We applied the first time for the grant and I got an email and saying that we didn't get the grant. And I was heartbroken. And I knew the chances were so slim. So I messaged the founder and I just said, thank you so much. And if there's anything I can do, you can only apply for this grant twice in your entire life. And then you can't
Mm.
apply anymore. It's called Baby Quest. They help people with infertility. Great organization. And she said, actually, y'all were in the finals and we loved you guys and your story, but your doctor did not submit the paperwork on time, which who I gave months and months notice to do it.
Of course
Um,
you did.
was angry. I do not get angry. That's what's interesting.
No.
I am not really an angry person.
Mm.
So it takes a lot for me to get angry. I was so upset and it was almost like, why is this happening? Like, how is this like we were in the finals? They were talking about us in the room, but they did not have the doctor's information. She literally put that. And
Like, I put myself on Facebook and everyone praying, and you did not do the paperwork.
I was so frustrated. Anyway, so the next round came around and we applied again. And anyway, I was in at the time, I was in a waiting and hope support group meeting. And I was at the end. I'd actually felt a peace. It was interesting. We were upstairs in a church and I said, "Will y'all just pray for me that God will either open this door or shut it, that I will just be 100% content." I feel like I was just at that ending point. I don't know even
Mhm.
how we got there. I just knew I was there. And while they were literally, while they were praying for me, my phone rang and I silenced it. This was during the prayer. They were literally praying exactly what I just said.
Mm.
So I tell everybody bye. It was the end. It was the very end of the meeting. And I walk out to my car and I get into it and I listen to the message. And it's Pamela, the founder of Baby Quest. Ah, and we had gotten the grant. And I was still in the parking lot and I got out of my car. I was like screaming, and, oh my gosh, she got it. And they were like just praising God with us because and I almost didn't. It's funny because in an infertility support group, you also want to be really sensitive to the other ones there.
Mm.
I went to baby showers that didn't bother me. There were times I was like, oh, I wish I could have that. But a lot of friends that go through this, they can't go to that. They got to get off social media on Mother's Day. They don't want to go to church. And you have to give yourself so much grace when you're grieving and things like that. But I knew the ones that were still behind. They were two of the leaders and another lady. And so I got out and I was so excited. And we just praised God in the parking lot.
Mm.
And it was a miracle.
And God's timing, like, you're, like, at the end, and you're like, "God, I'm done. What
Yeah.
let your will be done." And then he's, "Okay." Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they helped us and we still had to pay a part too, but they helped with about half of it. And we got one embryo. We did IVF in a little bit of an untraditional way. We did it with our beliefs that we believe that a child is created once they're an embryo. And so traditionally in IVF, just if you people want to know this, they basically any eggs that come, they fertilize every single egg. And so we prayed a long time and we prayed that God would tell us the number that we should fertilize. And they actually got 41 eggs out of me for my egg retrieval.
Mhm.
Another reason they're like, how are you not pregnant? It's crazy.
Ah.
The average woman gets like 8 to 10. So basically we ended up fertilizing 7 and we got our one little girl first. We out of the 7, 1 embryo made because regardless of how many made, we were going to put them all in. We were going to give them a try. We did not want to let any embryos go to waste. So anyway, so we fertilized 7 and out of 7, God made it where 1 embryo made
Mm.
for us. And she's our baby girl and she put her in and she's our miracle baby. She is. She's two and
And
a half now.
I was gonna say, and how old is she? And tell us her name.
She's 2 and a half. Her name is Julianna Bootsie. Jeremy wanted a J name, so I don't know if anybody's seen. I always bring this movie up, and people have never heard of it. Pollyanna. It's a Disney movie
Mm.
from way back. She brings kindness to the entire town. I love Pollyanna. So when he wanted a J name, I'm like, and I'm Julie's. Okay, Juliana. Oh my gosh, it reminds me of Paul. I tell people now, and they're like, never heard of Pollyanna. I'm like, that's because I'm an old mom. Okay,
No, no, we're young.
okay, we're young and hip. Anyway, but and then Bootsy. So another really cool thing is Bootsy. Her middle name is actually what she goes by. It's not. So we're in the South, so it's a cute Southern name. Bootsy. My grandmother was named Boot Richardson, and she really prayed with me along this journey too. She was so excited, and she wanted us to have a baby. Another reason I think God did not let us get the grant the first time, another timing thing, is that my grandmother passed away 2 days before we found out we got the grant.
Mm.
And we were like best friends. So I was grieving really hard during that time. When we got the grant 2 days later, it helped me for sure. It helped me through a really rough time. It was still hard. We lived next door to my grandparents my entire life. So when I just say
Yeah.
my grandmother died, it's a little bit different. Not that everybody's grandmother's not fantastic. She is literally like a second mom to me from 2 year olds up. Like they live next to us. So we named her Bootsy, her middle name Bootsy. And my grandmother, I know she's smiling down from heaven, seeing this little Bootsy, and she's got a personality. And my grandmother was she had gumption. Let's just put it like that. Okay. And so does our Bootsy.
And all
Uh,
those adorable photos of her, they are adorable. She's
wow.
like, "Yes, Julie, they're adorable." I love listening 7 years of waiting and 7 eggs, and that in the Bible, that number 7 is completion, and God's Julie, Jeremy, you were faithful. And like you said earlier, not every story is gonna have a good ending in it. And that's hard. It's, wait, I'm praying, I'm faithful, but that's not the end of my story. And we don't know the answers. We don't know the whys, but we do know to continue to be faithful. And God's going to do a work in you in that wilderness, in that hurting. Maybe it is to take that and to give you peace and say, this isn't your story. It's not meant to be. And it's hard, but the things that you learn through all those trials.
even through all that, because there were so many times, like, I felt deserted. Like, I literally asked God so many times, "Are you here? Do you hear me? And do you" I actually felt guilty. I almost wouldn't say it out loud, and then one of my mentors in church said, "God already knows what you're thinking. You can't hide what you're thinking from God anyway. It's okay for you to pray and say, like, why are you not giving me why are you not giving me, like, these honest, deep prayers? Have you forgotten me, Lord?" I felt so forgotten. I literally felt like he just forgot me, which is not truth at all. That's from the devil. God leaves the 99 to get the one. So that's absolutely not true. But yeah, it's just staying like plugged in and then just looking. I would encourage people, anybody going through this or anything similar, it doesn't have to be infertility, any struggle, to look for like the God moment and like what he's doing, because I think I probably could have missed a lot if I wasn't really looking for it. There was actually after our last there's so many things I keep remembering. After our last IUI, which I thought was the end of our story because I didn't know we would get a grant. I thought last IUI, I thought this is it. God's gonna do it. I was convinced God was gonna do it. We actually spoke in front of our church and had our whole church pray over us. I was so embarrassed to do it, but my friend who had gone through infertility before, who I finally told, she convinced me to have the whole church pray. And I was like, okay. And we had one more IUI. I thought, this is it, God. Okay, you've been waiting through this big story. And when that one didn't take, that was probably like my hardest. I thought, it's been like another full year and it was like the new year starting. I just knew I would be pregnant the year.
Mhm.
Miracles still happen. And
Mhm.
I think people just think they happen in the Bible, but they really do truly still happen if we look for them. There was
Mhm.
this pastor from Alabama that actually came to our house. I believe it was the day after, either the day of or the day after I had taken a pregnancy test. And we had never met him. Never, not one time had met him. Jeremy had talked to him on the phone. He bought a car for my grandparents one time. So he had Jeremy's number and he came up the driveway. He remembered when he was driving from Alabama and he was driving on Highway 69 and he saw the front of my parents' road. And he thought, that's where I think I bought that car a few years ago. And he said God was laying it on his heart to stop. And so he stopped and he went up to my parents' house and he literally asked my parents, he was like, is somebody trying to have a baby here? I feel like God has sent me here to pray over the couple that is trying to have a baby.
Mhm.
And they said, yeah, my daughter and son-in-law, they are, and their house is right here on this property. And they
Mhm.
came over. He literally knocked on our door and he just came in and prayed for us, Lauren. He had never met us. It was just, again, it's 100% God thing. And this was like another piece of manna that I told you. I'm not sure I would have made it. I don't want to use terms like that because that sounds really dark, but I'm not sure I could have made it after that other full another year and thinking that was the end of our journey before I knew we
Mhm.
could do it. It was like the hardest time. And God just refreshed us. God poured into us and we knew God was like, you are not forgotten. You guys are not forgotten. I have my hand on you. I
Yeah.
have my hand on your life. We still didn't have an answer. We still were in the waiting period. We still didn't know if we would ever, but we did know God was with us. You know what I mean? God was with us in the storm, in the wilderness, in the fire.
And
We ended up
how sweet is that? God's goodness is amazing. He doesn't have to do that. But I see you, Julie, and I'm going to show you in a big way. I'm going to bring this person that you don't know to your doorstep, which is you're in the middle of nowhere, not
yeah.
like your neighborhood.
Oh, God. We're in the middle of
Yeah.
no
I'm
way.
like, I think there's a gate that you have to like jump or something.
Yes.
That's amazing. And that's the goodness of God. And yeah, and I see you. I see your struggle. I see every tear you ever cried. I hold them in the jar and I haven't forgotten. And when you were saying, it's like I didn't wanna argue and tell God how I felt. Boy, I know what that feels like. God is a big God. He created you. He knit you in your mother's womb. He already knows what you're thinking, so why not lay it on him? Just pour it out before him. I'm mad. I'm angry. This isn't fair. Why do I have to wait 7 years? Why do I have to go through this struggle? And God will walk you through it. And like you said, to have that support and to have people praying, because I understand not wanting to tell a lot of people because then you have to answer all the questions, but to have that few that you can rely on to be praying over you, it's important.
There's one quote I definitely wanna say. It's not a Bible quote, but Charles Spurgeon said this, and you might have heard this before, and one of the women in the infertility group said it one time, and I held on to this verse. Oh my gosh, I looked at it daily, this quote, and it says, "I've learned to kiss the wave that throws me against the rock of ages." And man, it's funny now looking back, and even during at the end when I just giving it fully to God. It took me a long time to just fully give it to God and have a total peace regardless of the outcome, but almost like thanking God for all the waves because all those waves did crash me against all these rocks and it hurt. Oh, it hurt, it hurt, it hurt, but it led me so much closer to God. That's something that hopefully will encourage people that it's not all sunshine and daisies, but ultimately, if it brings you closer to God, which we're here to created to have a relationship with God, that's ultimately what it's about.
That hard stuff, it creates who you are. He's molding and shaping you through the hard things if you allow him to. Because
Wow.
you could just be angry and get a hard heart, but or you could let him use those hard things. So I thank you for sharing and being willing and being vulnerable. And I know that your stories touched a lot of people. And like you said earlier, not everyone's going to have a happy outcome, but still there's so much that you can learn from your story to lean in, to not give up, to continue to pray, to get the help and the support. Those are all valuable things.
I truly believe God will bless you in another way if it's not children, if that's what you're yearning for, or whatever it is you're yearning for, if it's not exactly what you want. I saw a picture one time and I love it. It's an illustration and it's like this little girl is holding this tiny teddy bear and she's holding it behind her back. She doesn't want to give it up to God. And
Mm.
God's trying to hand her like this gigantic teddy bear. And that illustration to me is it's truth. It's so much truth because even if God is not giving you what you want, God has something better. And I mean, I truly believe that whether would have gotten a child after a 7-year journey or not. I mean, it's just coming to the peace that he knows what you need in your life and just trusting fully and it'll be worth it. And it'll bring people to his kingdom. It will help people look to God. It will help bring people closer to his kingdom, whatever he decides to bless you with or whichever road you're on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Warren, you're so sweet to have me on here.
I'm learning that God's timing's always perfect. As I'm recording this episode, in the news this past week has been all about in vitro fertilization. And I honestly didn't even know that that was an issue to even be talking about. But apparently it is. And for the person listening that maybe has felt judged by their decisions, the thing that God reminds us to do always is to pray, to stay in God's word, and lean into what He is calling you to do and how He is providing. God can use these miraculous medicine and doctors to do amazing things, but we know that in this world, things can be used for good and bad. We also know that there will always be people to judge you and to ridicule you, but we have to keep our eyes focused on God and know that we have been praying. And that's what Julie and her husband, her family did. They stayed steadfast praying and leaning into God. And they were cautious and careful and took every decision before Jesus before they did anything. God honors those prayers and He opens doors. I want to remind you that if that possibly is something you're struggling with, and just like Julie reminded of us of the Israelites in the wilderness, God provided for them just enough every day, just enough manna each day so that they would be filled up. And sometimes that's all we need, God. We just need just enough from you to fill us from the next day to the next day when we're walking through our wilderness, when we're walking through our difficulty or our storm. So lean into God, continue to go before Him. It's hard. We get tired. We get frustrated. I've learned in my life most of the time when I'm praying for some really big stuff, it doesn't always get answered in a day or a week or a month. Sometimes it's years. And I think that happens more often than not. Now, God can answer a prayer quickly, but man, He teaches us so much when we are really struggling and when we are on our face before Him. So, if that's you, I hope that you're encouraged to continue to press forward. I'd like to pray over the one that might be struggling with not being able to have children, that God would just bless you abundantly more than you could ever ask for. Father God, thank you for Julie, for her willingness to share her story, for her willingness to go back and to remember those old wounds, those years of longing for her sweet daughter. God, for the person listening that knows that heartache of losing a child or struggling to want to have a child. It's hard. God, that you would fill those needs, whatever that might look like, that you would bless them with children, God, that you would use their story to minister others, Father, that you would intervene in a mighty way, that you would give them joy, that you would give them wisdom and understanding, God, that you would protect their marriage through this time, that their marriage would be bound together instead of torn apart. I thank you, God, for your goodness in all things. In Jesus' name, amen. The Bible says, instead of remembering the trauma and the hurt and the things that we've gone through, remember the blessings and the beautiful things, the grace-filled moments when the Lord has provided healing, restoration, redemption, grace, and divine intervention. And that's what we are doing today. We are remembering the amazing things that God has done. If you are enjoying the podcast, please continue to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button today. Don't wait. Continue to follow, and please share with other friends. Send it to them in a text message or email and tell them, hey, this Redeemed podcast is amazing. You don't want to miss out. Follow me on Instagram at lburnspt, or you can find me on Facebook at Lauren Redeemed. I hope you have a fantastic day.